Hello, Sanbonani, Jumelang, Molweni, and happy Mandela Month, South Africa. Welcome to your favorite youth current affairs show, Yokaloku Expressions, right here on SABC 1. We are going to Kubule Kaloku Ntobana Ileba. This is a platform for you as a young person to air your views. Uchindokbana inton lekyayo, kwa igetina sauzami ndokbana si kovule longoko. Well, Dimlo, ukalo saka lubisi unokanyezi.
South Africa, and of course, I am your host, Ulia Mavomesa. We are coming to you live and direct from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. Now, just last month, we celebrated World Drug Month under the theme People First, Stop Stigma and Discrimination, Strengthen Prevention. Now, we know drug abuse is a complex issue that affects millions, and I mean millions of young people worldwide and in South Africa particularly. But many of our young people who use drugs often face a stigma and discrimination, which can further harm their physical and even colossal their mental health and prevent them from accessing the help that they need. The facts are really sobering, and the South African Anxiety and Depression Group say that 12 years was the average age for drug dependency in South Africa last year. Now, our poll question is, are government substance abuse interventions effective? Kolo?
That's a very important question, Wenolema, especially in the new age where accessibility seems to be for everyone. Well, our producer, Utsehofato Mokhalejo, went to the street to find out from you as a young person in Dokbana, what do you have to say about this disturbing issue? Utete Wenjenje.
Whatever the government is doing right now is not actually doing enough. It's there's every single day we're actually seeing more people actually being addicted, and there's so many things that are activating the addiction, from people just like there's nightclubs that literally every single time you actually you've got access to all of these drugs and all of these things.
For me, in terms of the government helping youth, I feel like the government is not doing enough. If it was enough, we wouldn't have a problem that's so high, because I feel like most youth, we don't care about school. The school comes after substances. And then in the government, with what they're doing now, it's not enough. If it was enough, and then we'd actually get to see what social development is doing.
Mina engakusho ngalokho ukuthi ugovernment yebo uyasebenza kodwa akasebenzi kakhulu, because izinga lama drugs emalokishini nasemathawini liphezulu kakhulu, because siwumphakathi asibambisene sisodwa. So lento akuyona into esingayibeka kakhulu kugovernment, ngamele sibuyele na kwi-community, nathi kumele sibambisane ezumphakathi ukuze nasey'koleni sizokwazi ukukhipha ama-program, senze yonke into esemandleni ethu, besides ukuthi sicele ku-government every time.
I think they are doing what they can, right? But it also depends on the individual that are using the drugs. For instance, they do have programs that they are there for people so that they can be able to assist them. But then the people, sometimes, especially the rehab people, so the person that goes to the rehab usually relapse sometimes, and it's not the government's fault, I'm not going to lie.
Well, I beg your pardon for that. Interesting views from our viewers there. But of course, to help me unpack this discussion, I am joined by the Department of Social Development, Ms. Caesar Mahangwe, and a substance abuser who wants out, but unfortunately doesn't know how. Igama lakhe ke nguPhumlani Zulu. Asenibingelele sinamngelo hlelweni. Siyacinga nathi. I think isinqale ngawe Phumlani. I mean, sikhuluma ngeyidakamizwa namhlanje la ohlelweni. Mhlambe wena ungakosichazela usixoxele kabanzi ukuthi when did you start uqale nini wena ukusebenzisa iyidakamizwa?
Mina ngaqala kwami ukusebenzisa iyidakamizwa kodwa ngaqala 2006 sebenzisa iMendrex. So kwahamba isikhathi kwaba ukuthi kungena le drugs abathi nyawupe. Ngokuthanda izinto ke nami ngafuna ukugizwa ngayizwa, then ngcina sengi-addicted. till today.
Okay. So if ngokuzwa kahle uthi uqale 2006.
2006.
Manje what do you think was the reason yokuthi ufuna uqala ukubhema?
Into yokuthini uyabona mawubona abangani bayenza into so nawe ufuna ukuyitaste ekugcineni ngokuthi uyataste ekugcineni lento seyingenile seyikuwe egazini awusakwazi ukubuyela emuva manje uyiyeke ngoba manje sekuyini addiction efull yabo noma uthi uyacabanga ukuyiyeka ucabangana nama after effects akhona izinto ezinjalo ukuthi eyisani mangizothi ngiyayeka just nje ukuthi ngiyeke ngizoyeka kanjani ngoba manje ama pain ayazongikhawatha stomach cramp lokho ama-join uyakhathala uyajuluka ulali akungeni kudla uyavomitha yayibona into enjalo kutona.
So uthi ba the reason why usaqhubeka nayo it's because yiyo egcina ugrand.
Yes, but njoba ngisaqhubeka nayo kwamanje angisathandi. Angisathandi.
Okay. Before sikhulume ngaleyo ukuthi awusathandi ufuna ukuyeka sizokhuluma ngayo a little bit later on. But Mamusiza, I mean I can bring you in here. He's talking about the fact that there's after effects when he uses these drugs. So perhaps do you think that the social development department is doing much education to people about this?
Yeah, good afternoon to your viewers at home and good afternoon to everyone. Maybe before I even start about, what he has just said, it's important to indicate that the issue of alcohol and drugs, I want to emphasize alcohol and drugs because we seem to be focusing on drugs, forgetting that alcohol is a gateway drug. It is a drug, it's just that it's a legal drug and drugs are illegal or illicit drugs. So I want to indicate that it's very, very important that we deal with both the alcohol and other drugs so that we are able to be effective in terms of the interventions that we are rolling out. So in terms of our role as a department, we are not the only one that are expected to be the key players in ensuring that we address the issues of alcohol and drugs. It is the entire government system, it is the whole community. Everybody must own up and take accountability for what is happening so that we may be able to really turn around and cap the scourge of alcohol and drug abuse.
Phumlani, so manje ubhema ini manje? Uthe Menrex?
Menrex nenyawupe.
Nenyawupe.
Yes.
So iminyaka yakho unangaki?
Una 32.
Una 32.
Yes.
Mhlawumbe usisi uyasho ukuthi kunama programs abawacreatayo. Uke wacabanga wena ukuthi mhlawumbe uhambe uyojoina ama programs nani? And do you even think that uhulumeni wala South Africa uyakhona ukunisiza nini?
Ukukhuluma iqiniso nje bhuti wami angikaze ngacabanga ukuthi ngenze ama programs ngoba nala ngihlala ngakhona mina ayikho indawo la kuyenzwa khona ama programs la ngathiwa singakhona ukwa-attenda khona or ukuthi mhlawumbe anginalwazi layo. Yebo. Kona kube beyikhona indawo enjalo bengizozama ukuthi ngi-attende ngibone ukuthi bangasinceda kanjani basipha ziphi skills niphi knowledge ukuthi singayeka ihelp esingayithola injani.
Ms. Caesar, a person of you at home may beg to differ and say that perhaps these programs that you initiate at the department are not effective. You're right of reply to that?
Before I even talk about the effectiveness of the program, it's important to indicate that as government, we've got 9 public treatment centers, not 9 per se, in all the 9 provinces, we've got public treatment centers
Is
as
that
well.
Even fair? In this current day and age, 9 in the whole of South Africa?
No, it's 9. I'm still coming to the second part. The second part is that we've got over 300 facilities that are private owned and NGO, and we as government, we are subsidizing them. So you find that in a province like Gauteng has 5 districts. In all the 5 districts, we've got treatment centers. So treatment is there. The issue is knowledge, people knowing exactly how to go about and access the treatment centers, because there is a procedure or a protocol that has been outlined there that you need to follow. For an example, you can't just admit a person coming there. Firstly, a person needs to be checked by the doctor to say, is that person in a state to receive a detox, like he has already indicated, my brother, Oguchigunama withdrawal symptoms that you need to manage. because if they're not managed properly, a person can die out of that. So it's very important that you follow procedures to be able to be accessed there. But what I also want to say finally is that...
Can I please pause you for that? We have to quickly go to an ad break, but we shall continue with this conversation as it is really an important one that we ought to have as uMzansi Afrika kuphela. But for now, let's go to a quick commercial ad break. Stay with us.
Ndicinga uba ugovernment akenzi enough for abantu. Umzekelo abantwana abatsha basezitratweni batshaya inyawupe abafundi. So ingaske ugovernment azame icebo noba lolozama imisebenzi okanye i-sports or what azokwenza i-sponsors ukuze abantu abatsha babe nento yokwenza.
I would actually like for emphasis on the educational side of drug abuse and consumption because society is much more open to use manje. So it's not like people don't want to do it, but also other people get trapped into it. So for those people, if they had more knowledge as to what they're doing, so that would have a much better outcome, you know, doing something that you know, because other people just fall into it without even knowing what's going to happen in the future for them.
Khona indawo enjengoSanka, khona ama-rehab. You can still go to the rehab. You can start afresh. You can change your life. You can still become a new person.
Welcome back. You are still watching Expressions right here on SABC One. Interesting comments coming from young people on the streets. We are putting a spotlight on substance abuse. You know, instead of young people, or rather children, playing with dolls, cars, computer games, we see young children as 12 years old using drugs. Our poll question today, make sure that you do interact with us on our social media platforms. Are government substance abuse interventions effective? What do you have to say about this discussion? We are joined by Dr. Lebohanga what he has to say. Welcome to Expressions. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. As a medical practitioner, I mean, you work a lot with young people and also you do observe these patterns of young people using drug abuse. What would you say are the key factors that are influencing young people to use drugs?
I mean, when it comes to substance abuse, you know, we have what we call environmental factors, and then we also have internal factors. So your environmental factors would be things that are outside of the person. So things like easy accessibility of drugs and alcohol, you know, where they can find it by the street corner, you know, because our rules and our laws and our policies are not that stringent. And then internal factors would be things like what the child or the person is going through, you know, things like low self-esteem. It can be things like poor social skills, poor coping skills, you know. A lot of the children are going through mental health issues, you know, there's abuse, there's PTSD, there's depression. So it just depends on the individual itself, but also the environment does play a huge role.
Surely when you are addicted to drugs, you cannot resist the urge not to use them. And I mean, looking at the case Kaput Pumlani on the desk, you know, he mentioned that it's hard for him because of the withdrawal symptoms. You know, we are tetang into atini. How prevalent are those cases, especially looking at young people?
Yes, so that is the thing when it comes to trying to actually become clean. So it's not something that they can just say, okay, no, I don't want it anymore. You know, it's when they go to, that's why they have to check into a rehabilitation where there's, you know, it's like a multifactorial approach. You know, they're supposed to go through psychotherapy. You know, there can be things like 12-step programs where it is sort of a systematic withdrawal of the drug so that they can be less withdrawal symptoms, you know, because when they do just walk away from it and not smoke or you know, inject the drug anymore, then they do get those adverse symptoms. And that is most of the time what keeps them going back and going back.
And I mean, on the table, they also mentioned in Dobana, you know, the government programs that are implemented to surely curb this. Do you think they are effective? Because, I mean, you'd find that in some communities, they cannot even access these programs.
This is unfortunately true, you know. Unfortunately, it can be expensive because most of them are not free, you know. As our previous speaker has already mentioned, there's about 300 which are private, meaning that you do pay a fee and not everybody has the money to pay for it. And also awareness is a big thing. Not many people know. I think even Pumlani said he doesn't know where to go. So most people don't even know about these institutions. They don't know about these programs. So they just end up doing what comes naturally to them, and that is to avoid the symptoms, and they just keep going back to the drug.
I mean, I understand. I mean, we understand that you're contesting for Mrs. South Africa. Halala Mogel. I mean, what sort of strategies can you recommend to a young person osbukele or tiyazini namdiaz fanela no Pumlani? It's really hard to get. It's a dark space for me. What sort of strategies, especially from a medical perspective?
You know, the long and short of it is a lot of people are going through a lot. You know, our young kids are going through a lot nowadays with social media, with all these things that are going on. Post-COVID, there's a lot psychologically that is going on. So as I've mentioned, one of the main causes is internal factors, which would be things like people are going through abuse, people are depressed, there's anxiety. So, you know, the one thing that they do need is psychotherapy, is being seen by a psychologist, or just getting help mentally, because the problem is more times than not, it's more mental illness than anything else.
Dr. Lebohang, thank you so much for your time. We really hope that
Thank you so much for having me.
Right, in Mbogeli Wam, where expressions, we do continue with this discussion. What do you have to say? Do you think the programs implemented by government are effective? Make sure that you do interact with us on our social media platforms. Right now, let's take a quick ad break. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions right on SABC. One, great to have you with us still, as we are still putting the spotlight on substance abuse amongst the young people in South Africa. Now, our poll question is, are government substance abuse interventions really effective in a country where we are seeing an exponential growth in addiction? And of course, I'm still joined by Umama Usiza and Pumlani. And we do have Unomvuyo, which I'll get to a little bit later on. But Pumlani, what's the reason behind that?
Isidingo sokuthi ngifuna ukuyeka wena bhuti wami, ngisengilahlekelwe abangani surely about 5 or 6 ama best friends ami, and ashona ngiwabhekile kanje angalitholanga uncedo. Omunye ushone last year nge-31 December. So ngathatha isinqumo sokuthi mina njengoba sekushone umngani wami kanje umduduzi kulonyaka kumele ngizame ukuthi ngiyeke. Njengoba ngithi ngiyazama, ngiyafuna ukuyeka na kanjani.
Ms. Caesar, uthi ufuna ukuyeka, ufuna uzama ukuyeka. I mean, what's your advice to him at this point?
Okay. We do have government local offices where you've got social workers that are going to do a screening, and then after a screening they will apply for a treatment center for Yena, and they will do all the paperwork. Then from there, once they've secured a bed for him, then they will let him know when can he be, admitted at a treatment center. Like I've said earlier on, that we've got treatment centers in all the 9 provinces. So the first step is to go to report to any local office, social development, and ask for a social worker. Then the social worker will take it from there.
At the top of my mind, I have a question about the programs and the initiatives that you talk about. I mean, what sort of tools do you use as a department to measure the effectiveness of these programs? And I mean, on the other side with Okolosa, they were talking about Indoyoba, these programs, they are rarely available to abantu that live in remote areas. And what do you say to that?
I'll say we do have programs in all the areas. They may not be enough, like I said, because the problem is huge. It's bigger than one department, as I've said, but we do have programs that are out there. What I want to also emphasize is that we've got 4 levels of intervention. So the first level is about prevention. Like earlier on, my colleague said, prevention, it's important. Prevention, that's why we are creating awareness, and we are saying prevention is better than cure, because once you are addicted, chances of you reversing and going back are slim. So what is important is that people need to be empowered with information. They need to understand the harms of alcohol and drugs. They need to be able to say no, build resilient in terms of the programs that we are offering. So we have programs like Imoja, I'm Fine Without Drugs. It may not be everywhere, but we do in a number of provinces, plus minus 7 provinces, they roll out those kind of programs. We also have social behavior change programs like Bochomi, and then there are quite a number of programs. Maybe what we need to do is to strengthen and upscale what exists. We do have programs. The question is, are they everywhere? So those are some of the things that we need to look at and strengthen and make sure that they are everywhere.
Most definitely, I would assume and also take it that there is definitely room for improvement. Pumlani utofunugiyeka. So before mfunukubuza, have you ever tried ufugiyeka and then wapinda wabuyela futhi?
Angazi ngazama ukuyeka ngaphinde ngabuyela.
So since 2006, uzosho manje.
Yes.
You've been ubhema.
Yeah.
All right. Advice yakho ke kwabanye abantu that also are indulging in idakamizwa abangakhona ukuyeka.
Mina ngingakusho kubafethu nje ukuthi abaqinisele bazama ukushintsha impilo zabo. Lento iyayekeka is possible. Mina ngibonile kunomngane wami osebenza eThekwini akhwela uLinda Mdluli saspema naye uyekile uyasebenza kamnandi akhwele eDurban usebenza kahle. Last week bekakhona uthenga imoto ezithu naye uyas-encourage njengabangani bakho ukuthi bafethu ningalahli ithemba lento iyayekeka. Mara mina nginenkinga eyi-1 ke angina ID ngina 7 months manje ngihambele i-birth certificate. 7 months.
I think that is a conversation that Mrs. Siza will take off air because of time. We appreciate your presence here, Ms. Siza, who is, of course, the representative from the Department of Social Development, and, of course, Pumlani, who is a substance abuser. But in the next coming weeks, Asizobe Steta Londolayo, because he would have already recovered. Well, we have come to the end of our program. But before we go, now, our very own SABC News investigative producer, Unomvuyo Ntanjana, recently walked away with the Standard Bank Segoville Award in the lifestyle category for her emotive and a really heart-wrenching story titled Caving Out Hope. Nomvuyo, congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, how does it feel, first of all?
I know I keep saying this line, but it's very humbling. It's very humbling, and you can't help but feel deeply honored, and it is a humbling cherry on top. Because journalism, like I've been saying, journalism, we don't do it for recognition, for accolades. We do it to change lives. We do it to tell stories that have impact. So hence I'm saying this is a very humbling cherry on top.
I mean, why was it important for you to tell that particular story?
So with this story, it was an event. We were invited to an event at Department of Arts and Culture. So we get there, and I always try to see beyond the surface. So I conversed with the people around, and they're the family. There they were, a family of crafters. And the story goes deeper. They were raised on this skill. They are raising their children and their grandchildren on the same skill. So I felt, in this day and age, unemployment rate, it needed to be told. And how they make that art, they go to the forest, they come with the abwananje, everything that is involved there. I felt it was deep. And
it was very deep, and it was really something that we should be talking about. Well, congratulations once again. Thanks for watching. And we were going to have a young poet, but I believe because of time, we are unfortunately not going to have it. But that's it from us, Expressions. Great to have you. Thanks.